The National Bureau of Statistics company income tax data shows 12% decrease in tax payments for both domestic and foreign businesses in Nigeria in Q1 2024, with the federal government's revenue dropping to about 1.13 trillion naira. The depreciation of the naira, growing expenses, and economic difficulties have affected business profitability. Now, I have my guest who will be talking more about this. That is Musa Obed, is a macroeconomic analyst. Obed, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Lekan.
2 days ago, Obed, we established a conversation around how the depreciation of the naira, growing cost of living and production crisis as a result of inflation, rising government expenditure amidst economic difficulties have affected businesses in Nigeria. And I asked if these issues were man-made or inevitably situational. So I'd like us to start from there.
Okay, thank you, Lekan, once again. So regarding that question, as I said on 2 days ago, that they are man-made. However, we have to be practical and we have to understand the context of Nigeria. So when, for example, the reforms were made, when President Tinubu became president, right, removal of fuel subsidy, unification of the naira, etc., which has caused the society that we have today, the inflation crisis, etc. These are things that previous governments refused to do, and by doing them, we knew that the pains were coming. So it is man-made, but at the same time, it was something that had to be done, the reforms.
Well, Obed, currently the tax is charged at the rate of 30% for companies with more than 100 million turnover, and about 20% for companies with a turnover ranging between 25 million naira and 100 million naira. Now, these companies actually feel that the tax percentage is overbearing on them and further dents the ease of doing business indices in the country. So how do you see it, and how do you think that will further affect profitability?
Okay, so there are two things to consider here. The first thing, is to understand that there's currently a tax committee, right, being led by Tayo Oyedele, former partner of PwC, and what that committee is trying to do is to understand this kind of pains, this kind of problems, the current barriers in the tax regime. By September, Mr. Oyedele has stated that he will release a report from their findings to President Tinubu, and we believe that most of those recommendations that we made in that report will be carried out. So, and Mr. Oyedele has had a comprehensive discussion with key stakeholders in the Nigerian business space. On the other hand, how does it affect profitability? Well, when we ask ourselves, who are really the companies, right, operating in the 100 million turnover space in Nigeria? And these are companies that are really in the manufacturing sectors, in the mining sectors, etc. What does the Q1 report from the National Bureau of Statistics tell us? Well, it tells us that they have been hit and probably their profits has been hit. To give a sample, manufacturing by comparing the last quarter, that is Q4 2023, to this quarter, the first quarter of 2024, manufacturing decreased by 16%. That is the payments in company income tax decreased by 16%, right? And they are the reasons why there was this drop to 12% from Q3 2023 to Q1 2024. And as a result, we can just say and assume, of course, because we have to wait for their financial statements to really see how much of an impact this made. But we can say that, it has impacted them.
We've also seen a drop in the manufacturing sector, growth in terms of their performance, going below about minus 70.24%, according to the report. But I'd like to find out, it's actually telling on the manufacturing industry, looking at the tax policies and other government policies and inflation in the country that are actually stifling growth, and they seem not to have enough support to propel them to continue to thrive. Are there any forms of cushioning that you think can be made available to them while they try as much as possible to keep afloat, pending the time we begin to reap the dividends of these several economic policies of governments?
So the manufacturing sector thrives on being able to access, funds to function, daily operations, etc. And of course, like with the interest rate hikes by the CBN, which is their mandate at the end of the day, this has been impacting people who borrow more, because now the cost of borrowing that money has increased, right? And like when you're paying back, you're also paying back higher. What can be done? Well, there are several things that can be done that manufacturing companies can do. First is really like local sourcing for certain things. A lot of companies, prefer to source things from abroad, but I think it's a time right now to really consider, okay, what are the local options and how can we leverage our local options? Another important thing that I believe, we help manufacturing companies is to do strategic partnership. I think that is the time for companies to come together and have conversations and ask, okay, our entire sector is being impacted by the current macroeconomic conditions. What are the kind of steps? How can we work together to ensure that we hedge ourselves against negative impacts? It's not forever, like this current situation that we're in won't last forever, but for the current being, survival is necessary. So how can they survive? And then finally, I think they have to take another approach to go and advocate for what they actually want, and that is to the government through, policy advocacy. By policy advocacy, I mean that, just directly going to the people that will actually make laws to benefit you.
Okay, so you talked about the mining sector. Let's also put the financial sector and the information and communication sectors in the mix, because we know that they also contribute to the CIT revenue. What do you think the potentials are for these sectors moving forward, owing to the fact that, of course, there are different policies of government, and they definitely will continue to affect them until we begin to see a turnaround, most especially in the status quo within the business ecosystem. Are there measures whereby we can help them in terms of propelling contributory growth? Are there things that we need to do, maybe other measures that we need to bring on board to further help them to do their bits, whether or not we have situations around them that are not too encouraging for now?
Okay. So to answer your question, first of all, I'll go back to the report. So in the Q1 report, what we see, is that these sectors that you've called, right, manufacturing, mining, information, they are part of the big five sectors that really shape the corporate income tax payments in Nigeria. And it's even in government's interest to ensure that they are thriving, because if they thrive, then they're able to pay you more taxes, etc. So these big four, they increased when we look at the growth from Q4 2023 to Q1 2024. They had a 0.8% growth quarter on quarter. And like the manufacturing sector was the one that grew the largest, the mining sector, grew the largest by 8.4%. We might be asking ourselves, well, why did the mining sector, for example, improve so much, whereas the manufacturing sector, didn't do as well? Several things we can consider here. Well, the first thing is that, the mining sector is a sector that the president and the government themselves, right, have kind of prioritized. They are really interested in ensuring that the mining sector improves, especially compared to the last government. And then the second thing is the nature of, okay, who are the people actually running, the mining sector, and who are the people running the manufacturing sector? We'll see that, to a large extent, the people controlling the mining sector, or like leading the mining sector, right, have an external influence as compared to the local people. So there's this support externally that they get that kinds of protects them from impact that the manufacturing sector might not get because they are locally owned, etc. As just to finally state a point, like what can they do? I think they can do the same things that I said with the manufacturing sector.
Okay.
They have to be able to understand that we're in precarious times. We have to come together, work together, and look for how best to survive. It's not forever, but we have to survive.
Of course we do. On the flip side of this conversation, Musa, now Diageo, the majority shareholder in Guinness Nigeria PLC, is set to sell its 58.02% controlling stake to Singapore-based multinational company Tolaram. The deal will allow Tolaram to acquire Diageo's shareholding and license Guinness Nigeria for long-term production. And the transaction, according to what we know, is expected to be completed in the year 2025, pending regulatory approvals in Nigeria. So first, now Guinness Nigeria, as we see it, joins the long list of multinational companies that have either exited the country or sold majority of their stakes. A lot of questions that's been asked, or part of the questions being asked, is what is actually going on with these companies in Nigeria? And on the other side, is it good for local businesses? Maybe they can come in and fill in that space and begin to, fill that vacuum and begin to thrive in that regard? Or this actually poses a dire economic trend for Nigeria, something that needs to be nipped?
Yeah, as you stated rightly, Lekan. So last year, P&G as well as GSK left Nigeria with other companies as well. But I think in this particular case for Guinness Nigeria, it's not the same. And I'll explain what I mean. So the sale, right, of the majority stakeholder, the 58% from Jaijo to Toleram Group, is a different situation because the person acquiring or getting that stake is Toleram Group. And Toleram Group has a presence in Nigeria, has been in Nigeria for 50 years. So technically, I think the position of Toleram is understanding that, okay, certain businesses are going and they want to be able to, have a further stamp on the Nigerian society, the Nigerian business space, or, sectors that they are currently working at as a consumer goods. But Toleram Group is not Nigerian, right? They are Singaporean/Indonesian, and they have understood that, okay, this is an environment that we can profit from. Remember, this is a company, a global company that has $1.2 billion in revenues as of 2021. So I think there are certain kinds of companies that currently work in Nigeria that will take advantage of the situation, even though, like other foreign companies are exiting at the same time. And to just tell us how big was the transfer of ownership. So if we use the market capitalization to kind of calculate the 58%, right? We know that the stake that Toleram Group bought from Diageo was about 69.3 billion naira.
Okay, so before we wrap up on this, I'd like to just quickly find out, a few people feel that having Toleram become a partner in this particular stake would be more beneficial for Guinness Nigeria. It's not as though totally this particular brand or its product will be fizzling out of the Nigerian market, but it seems as though Toleram, with its equity in size in terms of financial capacity, might be able to further drive the product growth in that regard. If you're going to look at it from a positive note, do you think that might actually happen? And of course, it might just pose something positive away from what people are actually speculating.
Yes, I think, they are right in, assuming that it will be positive for Guinness Nigeria because, as I already stated, Toleram Group is a business that's been operating in Nigeria for 50 years. I think they really understand the Nigerian markets because, they have stake in Nestle Nigeria, they have stake in Cadbury, they are part of the people, the part of the companies, right, that ensure that the Lekki Port, PZT was functioning. So this is a company, I think, that is really fundamental when you talk about business in Nigeria. When you go to certain spaces, right, they are there. So in that sense, I think that for the Guinness brand and for the Guinness business, because Guinness, by the way, their revenues has been increasing for the past 5 years. It's just the net profit that has been a problem for them. I think that's what Toleram is trying to tackle because, you might be increasing in revenues, but your bottom line is still profits and its profits is not doing well. Well, you need a company or somebody that understands how to do business in Nigeria to help you do business in Nigeria.
Okay, now a potential mandatory tender offer to minority shareholders by Toleram was mentioned in the report. Now, how might this offer impact the overall share price and the future prospects for minority shareholders in Guinness Nigeria? And also, will they benefit from Toleram's involvement, or there is a risk of a delisting from the Nigerian exchange similar to past acquisitions?
Okay, first of all, I'll respond to the first question, right? What exactly were investor sentiments on that particular day? So if you check the Nigerian stock market, the previous price of Guinness Nigeria before the transfer of stake and then the price of Guinness Nigeria after the transfer of stake, right, there was an increase of about 8.41%. So the strike went from 50.55 naira for each share. And then, by the time, the deal was announced, the Guinness Nigeria rose by that 8.4% to 54.8 naira. What we see here is that, investors generally, right? So minority, they see this as a good thing and they want to be part of it. Will they have access to as much, like shares as they would like? We are not sure because this deal is yet to complete by 2025. What does it mean, like for Guinness Nigeria in terms of the listing, etc.? Will they lose that position that they currently have? You are right. You mentioned that, there have been major cases whereby they get a stake and then they, delist, they're out of the stock market. I think in this particular situation, perhaps the same thing might happen, but I think it might happen just so that they will be able to fix the business landscape for Guinness Nigeria.
So there are still also issues around foreign ownerships and antitrust. Do you think they'll be able to wrap it up before the end of 2025?
I don't think that's possible because, when we're talking about antitrust for Tolaram, there are many things they are involved in Nigeria. So it's a legitimate concern, but I don't think this is something that can happen in the next year.
All right, no problem. We'll keep
Yeah.
our eyes on that anyway and continue to see how it unfolds. Musa Obed, the macroeconomic economic analyst, it was nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.